Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're going to be going over 5 things to improve on or focus on to improve when it comes to the safe lane or position 1 role. I made one of these videos a long time ago, and I mean I don't know, it might have been years ago at this point. Maybe I made one recently, but not that I remember. Nothing like what I'm going to talk about here today. And basically I've been coaching. I primarily, when I do private coaching, it happens to be safe lane players. I think it's because there's the most safe lane players out of all the roles. But I've just noticed that there's a few things that I often go back to, and I thought, why not make a video on it, right? This is going to help people. Yeah, I can't go in depth like my coaching sessions. I can't talk about a point and then give 3 examples or 4 examples based on a pro's gameplay in relation to the player's gameplay, but I certainly can give you guys a bit of a roadmap. So if you're struggling, you have no idea where to go, you don't know what to work on next, these are going to be 5 points that should give you pretty clear ideas of what you can do to improve, and let's get into it. And quickly, I wanted to briefly let you guys know that the GameLeap website is currently 50% off if you use the code POG50 at checkout. I'm telling you this because number 1, I think it's a good deal, and number 2, I'm making a lot of top tier content over there, live game analysis, replay analysis. I'm going to be uploading some coaching sessions eventually, very soon. So I have a lot of things that I think you guys should go check out. So if you're interested in more content like you get here on YouTube and stuff that's really going to help you get to the next level, I'd appreciate it if you could use the code POG50 and get your 50% off, sign up to the website, and I'll see you there. So the first one is high CS and lane regardless of difficulty. Now this is probably the most standard one, so the rest of the points will be a lot less straightforward, a lot more general, and a bit more complex to talk about. But this is one I had to put it on the list, and I know I was a little bit afraid of putting it number 1 on the list because I thought people would be like, oh, it's just last hit better, learn to pull creep aggro. I mean, at the end of the day, fundamentals are what's most important in Dota, 100%, but high CS and lane matters so much, it's insane. It dictates the entire pace of your game. It really does, because good CS in lane determines whether or not you're going to get kicked out of lane because you can't get your ring of health in time, or your extra set of tangos, or your boots to put pressure, so on and so on. And the reason why I specifically put here high CS and lane regardless of difficulty is because what you have to understand is that no matter how hard the lane is, let's say you are playing Faceless Void against Marcy Viper, a very clear counter lane to the Void. They can chase you after you time walk, they do very consistent overtime damage that also counters time walk. In general, it's a lane that you shouldn't be able to win. However, Void has better damage than Viper at level 1, level 2, and doesn't get pressured out in those levels. As a result, you should win those levels. If you do not dominate those levels, at least in a somewhat significant way, you will not have a good rest of the lane. You won't be able to do nearly as well as possible. And if you do manage to beat Viper this hard in the early levels, you might even be able to win the lane, or at least draw even, which in this matchup is probably a win, unless you get rotations. You know, that's an exception. The point is, there's that. There's also the fact that creep aggro is one of the, even though I've been talking about creep aggro for 3-4 years now. I remember making some of my first YouTube videos talking about creep aggro. People were so bad back then, so bad. Nowadays, everyone creep aggros, at least a little, but not well. And if you think you're one of the people who does it well, you're probably wrong and deluding yourself, and every time you have a bad lane, a huge aspect of it is likely aggro. I largely coach people from the 1 to 4K brackets, that's the most common MMR I coach, and what I notice is that there'll be a situation, this is one that comes up, the wave will shove into the enemy's tier 1. Right? You'll push in the wave. For one reason or another, your creep wave is pushing towards the enemy's tier 1 tower. Instead of contesting it like they could, they panic. They either do nothing, which is actually way more common than you think. They don't even realize the creep wave is contestable if they just go from the left side or the right, depending on where you're leaning, and pull creep aggro towards the tree line, and then pull it again to bring it towards your tier 1. I can't exactly explain it with a game example because that's not the purpose of this video, but the point is that you can survive most lanes and do well most lanes. If you're not, you need to look at your tango usage, your last hitting, your denying. Are you taking unnecessary trades in lanes where you're not even strong? Are you playing Naga Siren and not using your illusions effectively? Are you not sending them at ranged heroes? Are you not pressuring the offlaner? Are you not taking net? when maybe you should be because you have a kill lane. There are a lot of things to think about, and you're probably not. So really push yourself and make sure you have 25 by 5 almost no matter what. And honestly, I recommend aiming for 60 to 65 CS by minute 10 as a baseline. I used to say 50. I think that's pretty low nowadays. Aim for 60 to 65 and you'll be in a better place. All right, next up, number 2. Whew, this one's tough, man. This one's tough. Usually, it's really hard to coach this. It's really, really hard. And it's showing up to fights. As a carry player, it is not your job just to farm. Now, a lot of people maybe know this message. The problem is, you usually see, until you get to a much higher rank, and I'm talking about 6K, 7K, honestly 8K. Even, I know a lot of rank 300 players that I just think they AFK farm. And like, you can get to a high rank by being the best AFK farmer on Terrorblade because the hero's good at it, but not really. And you'll never be that good. Even these like AFK rank 300 Terrorblade farmers, they're still showing up to fights occasionally at the right time. You can't get to rank 300 by being completely AFK. That's not a thing. But I actually, a big trend I notice is I'll teach people how to farm effectively. And then they get so good at farming that they think they're just gonna win games by farming. Kills are worth way more than creeps, generally, right? Also, if you win your team the team fight, if you are the hero that puts your team over the edge, for instance, let's say your Marcy gets gone on and you happen to show up as Sven and you hit a stun that gets her out, allows her to get her BKB off, she gets it off and turns the fight, you need to be at the fight then, right? And that's a niche example and you might be like, wow, that's so specific, how could I ever know? It's about knowing your timings, it's about knowing your cooldowns, but most importantly, out of all of them, if you have your timings, okay, you probably know if I'm playing Slark and I have a Diffusal Blade, I can kill people. If I'm playing Juggernaut and I have Midas Maelstrom, but I have my ulti and my spin, I can kill people. You probably know that, right? So you probably know that. However, you still likely don't show up to fights, especially dives. The biggest example I coached recently, and I will actually use this exact example. This is, the person probably knows exactly who I'm talking about. They're playing Anti-Mage, and they just would AFK until their team lost. When they could TP into tier 1 dives, the enemy team would all be low HP frequently. They would be able to mana void and get return kills. And it would be a big deal. Those return kills, if they're giving you 300 gold, that's 2 creep waves, right? And it's not like it slows down your farm. It doesn't slow down your farm because it's a ton of XP as well. And if it's also a kill streak, right? You kill someone on a kill streak or a core, it's way more than 300 gold and a ton of XP. And it doesn't slow down your farming because you can immediately go back to farming the nearby camps. And it could save your teammate, which is then another 300 gold net worth swing. You know what I mean? So you can't, as a carry player, be AFK and just shove side lanes the whole game. But you also cannot just fight 24/7. You can't do that either. The amount of carry players I watch that don't know how to keep the map open, which is a future point in the video, is insane. But let's get into number 3. Understanding where on the map your hero farms best. Honestly, this one I really can't get into depth because there's so many freaking examples, but let's give a couple. Let's say you're playing Bristleback against Lycan. Where should you farm? I want you guys to answer that. I'll give you a couple of seconds. 3, 2, 1. Where should you farm on Bristleback against Lycan for the majority of game until you have stacks? In your lane. Why? Because you specifically counter that hero, and you can protect your tower and farm all the nearby camps at the same time. So you're not only shutting down the Lycan, taking away his big camp and small camp and tower, but you're also farming yourself. So generally in that matchup, you should stay in your lane. Even if you think you might die, you probably should stay in your lane, open up the map for your offlaner, because you're not taking their farm either, and defend your tower. It's probably your best case scenario. If you're playing Slark, do you want to farm the triangle? Probably not. Rarely. So what should you do? Likely, you should be pushing out deep creep waves, abusing your night vision and your mobility to push in deep creep waves. Put it in deep. Get it deep. All right, go deep. That's what you got to do. If you're playing Slark, you have to go deep on the map. You can't just sit in your triangle and hit neutrals. If you're playing Drow, should you go out on the map? Okay, should you go deep? No. Go hit the triangle. Go hit the triangle. Don't get ganked under your safe lane tier 1 14 minutes into the game. Force your team to commit 4 TPs, which is immediately a 400 gold net worth swing. TPs that also get delayed because there's incremental TPing in Dota, right? If one person TPs, then 2, every single TP takes longer. Don't do that. Don't force your team to defend a Drow who's probably just going to die by the time they get there. Don't do that. Go hit the triangle. If you're playing Dusa, go hit the triangle. Hit the neutrals. Hit neutrals. Okay, but if you're playing Slark, you don't hit neutrals that well. You do hit neutrals. I'm watching a game right now, a Slark game. He has 218 CS in minute 25. He hit plenty of neutrals. When he hit level 6, he hit a ton of neutrals. He bought a Falcon Blade, had the mana regen, bought some clarities. He hit neutrals, but after clearing the wave. Or if there was no wave to farm, he would hit neutrals. Because that's what Slark can do. He can take the dangerous farm, allow his Leshrac, for instance, to take, who I think didn't have bots, at least early on, to do that, or let the Pudge, who can't split push effectively, to do that, right? To take the safer farm. So you can enable your teammates as well. We're getting really advanced here, but I want you guys to understand that there are layers to where you farm, and we're getting really advanced. But think about it. If you have a hero like Lycan on your team, and he's playing the offlane, and you go and you take his farm, right? And he has a Helmdom creep bottom, and you force him into an area where he doesn't have, like, let's say you force your Lycan to your safe lane early on, that's horrible. Because he's pressuring towers that are useless, right? Which is the top tower. He's not going to be able to connect on mid tower nearly as easily. And also, he's not just going to be able to farm the nearby camps and advance the map. It's going to slow down his pace of the game. So making that play would also be a bad thing if you can't back off and jungle. Getting into number 4, this is a cool one, quick point. You have to know how to recover a bad lane. So I was watching a game. Just watched this game. It was the same Slark game I talked about a second ago. So he's playing Slark. He's against Slardar. 18 CS at minute 6. Not over exaggerating. Getting crushed. Okay? Really, really bad position. Doesn't know what to do. What does he do? He pulls the small camp, right? Most importantly, he pulls the small camp. And on top of that, he watches for the Slardar to shove in the wave. Now, this might seem basic, but when you have a bad lane as a carry, do you know what most carry players do? They hit neutrals until they lose. Or they sit in the lane against a hero they can't lane against, and they get run at when they're not under their tower, and they take a ton of unnecessary damage or die. In between that is the best play. If you are playing a hero that can't strictly jungle, you're not playing PL level 6, you're not playing Wraith King, you're not playing Naga, TB, you shouldn't just jungle. You can't recover by just jungling. You need lane creeps. Especially if you're level 3, 4, 5, you need lane creeps. Let's say you're playing Slark or Jug. You need lane creeps. So what do? Number 1 is pull. If you can pull, you pull. Don't instantly kill the camp. Let the creep wave stay alive a little bit on the pull camp and let the wave shove into your tower so you can farm under tower. That's step number 1. Now, the wave, it goes under your tower, likely. Okay, so then what happens when the wave goes under your tower? It pushes back towards the enemy tower. Can you contest it then? No, you can't. So what do you do in that case? Hit a couple neutral creeps, okay? Hit some neutral creeps. You can't lane, the lane's really bad. You can't lane, hit some neutral creeps. Or pull, if there's another pull camp, pull again. Then what do you do when you're hitting neutral creeps? Don't just keep hitting neutral creeps. Hit them until the enemy offlaner, because they suck at the game and they're 3k MMR or something like that, shoves the wave back under your tower. Then go get the wave again. Now, of course, there's situations where you're going to get dove under tower, and if you literally can't lane at all, don't. But most of the time, you can if it's under tower. You can if it's under tower. Get the wave under tower by pulling and waiting for the offlaner to shove it in, and pay attention to when they do that, and you will actually be able to recover in games. It doesn't take a lot, it just recovers. It just takes those 2 ideas. And finally, coming into number 5, knowing your general spikes and what they mean. Whew. Honestly, talking about advanced points, I mean, okay, we'll stick with Slark for now, okay? You hit Ags on Slark, it's minute 25, that's nighttime. What should you probably be doing? Do you know the answer? Hopefully you do. If you don't, okay, you either don't play Slark or you're bad at Slark. Okay, so you have Ags, it's nighttime, minute 25. You're very strong. Slark has bonus night vision. You probably shouldn't be hitting defensive neutral creeps. Because you are strong with Ags, and your Pounce now steals Essence Shift, you want to get active and fight and build Essence. Even if you don't kill people, you want to chip them down, build Essence, and then Pounce away. So that's what you should be doing, clearing creep waves and then looking for kills. However, if it is minute 24, it's daytime, you are 1 component away from cleaning your Ags, what should you do? Not run at them, unless they overextend. Of course, in that case, like, yeah, there's exceptions always, right? If the enemy dives at tier 2 and they're all low and you're playing Slark with a Diffusal, even if you have 3 components to Ags, you could show up and clean up. You could, but generally you shouldn't, because you're very close to Ags, and it's not nighttime. And nighttime's huge for Slark, so his Shadow Dance kicks in quicker, and because he has bonus vision to pick targets, especially with his axe, right? So that's a good example. Let's say you're playing Naga Siren, you have Manta style. Should you fight? Once again, you can. If the enemy doesn't have illusion clear AoE nukes and they're alone, Naga actually destroys these types of heroes. For instance, unit heroes. Naga picks on Lycan, picks on Beastmaster, generally. Depends on what Beastmaster's skill build is. You get the point, right? Picks on these heroes. So there's that. And then when she has Orchid, let's say she goes Manta Orchid, should she get active? Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Does she want a team fight? It depends. Depends on how the game is going. If the enemy has a Leshrac and their offlaner is a Pudge and, the safe laner is Sven, maybe she needs to get to her hard timing so she doesn't just die. You know what I mean? Maybe the Orchid isn't good enough that game. Maybe she shouldn't even go Orchid. Actually, in that game, it's probably a decent idea so you can buy the Mage Slayer and buy Bloodthorn later on, as Lesh and Pudge would make you want to do that. You get the point. You need to understand your hero. This is really hard, and honestly, the best way you can learn these things is just by watching videos and playing the game, and it takes time, but I just want you to understand that's a big point of improvement. If you're not gaining rank, a lot of it's just kind of learning matchups over time and paying attention to whether or not the plays you're making are working. Because, you're going to come to wrong conclusions sometimes, but often when you're playing the game, you need to say, okay, I died. Why? Could I have farmed faster? Could I have had a better lane? Did I go right before an item timing? Was I 400 gold from my heart? Did that sway the fight? Did I take a bad angle into the fight, right? Did I approach the fight from the wrong area? Did I let my initiators initiate, or did I overforce the fight? Did I dive a tower, right? So there's a lot of factors here, but for the carry, really, really know your timings and play around your timings. I'll give a couple more examples just to end off the video because I think it is important. For Animage, what's your main timing? Well, the main general timing for Animage is typically 3 items. It's going to be the Scotty after the Manta and the Battle Fury. But you can still pick people off on Manta. You can, especially if it's an advantageous fight. You're not tanky yet, but you can definitely look for the backliners in the fight, or a good Mana Void, or someone who overextends, right? But the Scotty is really when you're going to get aggressive, maybe look to Roche, so on and so on. For a lot of carries, 3 items is kind of the magic number, but it doesn't mean you show up. Let's say you're playing PL, it's a bad PL game. You might want to rush Manta and split the map until you get Scotty. If it's a good PL game and they don't have, heroes that threaten you a lot, maybe they have mostly physical damage, then you can go for an early Diffusal Blade and actually try to pick people off and take early skirmishes. You see what I'm saying? So it really depends on the game. You got to look at your matchups, think about your hero, understand what your items enable you to do. If you've bought a farming item, you probably should be farming. If you've bought 2 fighting items, you probably should be farming until a fight looks like it's going to happen, and then you should TP in and connect with your team. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know a lot of this was really advanced and maybe a lot to take in, but hopefully it shows you that there's a lot you're probably not thinking about or caring about that really makes a big difference when it comes to the position 1 role. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and I'm out. Peace.
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, before you tune out, subscribe to the GameLeap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.